Hey everyone, welcome to Mountain Beast Mysteries. It seems like a lot of times when we're hoping to encounter something mysterious in the woods, when we're looking to have an encounter, when we're out there searching and we have these topics on our mind, we never find anything. It usually happens when we least expect it, when we're on a trip where it's just us trying to enjoy the great outdoors, or we're not thinking about these things, We're just trying to have a good day. We're out in the wilderness hiking, enjoying, time with family and friends, and that's when the really weird stuff happens. And that is true with the stories I'm going to talk about today. I have 3 really creepy Bigfoot encounters, all of which happened under quite normal circumstances. These didn't happen deep in the depths of the forest. These happened at actual legitimate campgrounds, where your guard is down. It seems like that's what happens, your guard is down, you're looking to have a normal time, and that's when the crazy stuff happens. So for people who are investigating the subject, intentionally going out with all our equipment, going on prolonged trips out into the bush, we never find anything. Well, I shouldn't say never, we do find stuff, but it seems to be quite rare that we have these visual sightings. I've never had a visual sighting of Sasquatch or Bigfoot or whatever you want to call it. I found what I think is trace evidence, potential tracks, and things of that nature. I've heard weird noises. But it seems like the people who actually witness these things are people who are not expecting to see them. And I think the key is to not have your guard up, to not be expecting it. You're in a different state of mind when you're just relaxed, looking to have a good time. But when we go out in a more intrusive way with this stuff on our mind, we're maybe a little bit scared because, let's be honest, a lot of these stories are kind of scary. And once you hear the ones I'm about to talk about, you're going to agree with me. It involves a Sasquatch walking up to a camper in the night. There's a family inside, parents and children, and 2 of the kids are awake, and they have an experience they'll never forget. So let's have a quick listen to this first encounter. It was in Cave Junction, Oregon in the late 1970s. My family was visiting my grandparents who lived there at the time. My family, my dad, mom, 2 sisters, and brother, were sleeping in a tent trailer. My sister and I slept on the side that overhangs the trailer hitch, when, early one morning, the 2 of us were awakened to something scratching the bottom of our bed. Then it was scratching the tent part above us. Then the 3 sides of our bed. Neither one of us said a word, but moved quietly to the zipper where the window was. We slowly unzipped it and were instantly assaulted with an awful smell. We saw dark brown fur up against the mesh, and the scratching was once again above us. We quietly got out of bed and woke my parents, but by the time we got them up and they went outside, it was gone. We figured that the movement of the trailer scared whatever it was off. We were positive it was Bigfoot. The trailer was parked on the pavement, so there was no way to know if there was footprints anywhere. My parents and grandparents never spoke of whatever they found, or didn't find that day. So there's quite a few Bigfoot reports you can find online of Sasquatch approaching a camper or a trailer. There was a few instances on Vancouver Island of Bigfoot shaking campers and shaking, boats that are on trailers being pulled by a truck and doing things of that nature. So that seems to me like something they would do to, scare people out of an area. But in this case, in this story, it didn't really do anything violent like that. It was just kind of curious. And scratching all the different sides and the top and the bottom of the tent trailer, I wonder, it must have known those people were in there in that part of the camper. I wonder why it was doing that. Was that just it being curious, or did it know these people were in there and it was trying to scare them? I don't know. But that camper was apparently 7 feet tall. So trying to imagine a bear reaching over top of a 7-foot tall camper or tent trailer and doing that, scratching the top of it, it's kind of hard to picture in your mind because, they would have to reach up and do that. And this thing does it to the top and does it to the bottom. How would a bear even scratch the bottom underneath of the trailer? I don't think it'd be able to do that either. They don't like turn their paws, you know, up in that position to do that. So if this is something hairy, something smelly, it has to be a Bigfoot. If it has the ability to do those things with its hands, I can't imagine it being anything else. Unless it was a person. But it really doesn't seem like it was a person either. You know, they saw the hair through the zipper. They could smell that classic Sasquatch odor that's talked about countless times. Almost skunky, like skunky mixed with dead meat or something like that, like a rotting meat smell mixed with maybe like wet dog. So, yeah, that is definitely an encounter these kids would never forget, and no tracks were found, as it said in the report. And, you know, the tent trailer was parked on pavement, but even in cases when people are just like camping on the ground, like on the dirt, a lot of times there won't be tracks found either, which leads you to believe that maybe there's something more to Sasquatch than it just being a physical creature. I think we're going to be, you know, surprised to find out that Sasquatch is more than just a physical creature. I think it's gonna come out that it's gonna be more than that. You know, all the decades of research that's being done on Sasquatch being a flesh and blood creature hasn't like yielded anything, you know, new. Still don't have definitive proof of Sasquatch, but I think it's going to be found out that it's going to be something more. I just have a feeling. Of course, it could still just be a flesh and blood thing, but I don't know. The way things are going these days with all the UFO stuff coming out and all that weird, you know, interdimensional stuff people talk about, it's talked about a lot more than it ever used to be, and it's accepted a lot more than it ever used to be, because it seems to be that there's way more anecdotes of things like that occurring. So I've witnessed so many weird things in the last few years that it really wouldn't shock me if there was like an element of the Sasquatch that seems paranormal or supernatural. And the not leaving footprints thing could be attributed to that, because maybe it could be in this reality at one moment and another moment it's not. So who is to say? A story number 2 happened at a campground as well in a national park, and the campsites were quite spaced out, and only one person in this group of people that was camping experienced this Sasquatch creature, if that's in fact what it is. Let's have a listen here. I believe that I saw Bigfoot in Oregon back in the 80s. I was with my parents and sister on a camping trip somewhere south of Crater Lake. It was around 9 p.m. and had been dark out for at least an hour. We all went to bed. My parents slept in the trailer and my sister slept in the camper, and I got to sleep in the tent. We had all gotten our spots, with the tent about 15 feet from the trailer. I crawled into my sleeping bag and could hear my parents' voices, but I couldn't understand what they were saying. I could also hear a couple of twigs snap. At first I thought it was a squirrel, but then I thought, there aren't any squirrels out at night. The terrain is flat with small pine cones and tons of pine needles covering the ground. We were the furthest campground out, and there was national forest all around. The closest campsite to ours was about 60 yards away, and there was one guy in it, and he had a great big bonfire going. I had seen him right before I went into the tent, and could hear him banging some pots or pans now and then. So this noise was getting closer. It wasn't very loud, but I could make out actual footsteps. It was coming from the wooded side of the tent. This tent is a 9x12 with about 5-foot walls. I could still hear my parents and knew it wasn't the guy in the next campsite. It was at the back of the tent, and it was coming around towards the front. In the corner of the tent, I could see the glow from the bonfire. I was looking at the glow because that's the only bit of light that I could see anything. I could make out this outline shadow, and it was human-like, but I could only see it from about the chest down. It was very quiet and purposeful in its walking. It bumped into the corner of the tent, and the whole tent shook. It seemed to stop in the fire glow and stare at the tent as if to wonder why it shook. I would think that if it was a man, when it had bumped into the tent, that it would have acted differently than just staring at it. It was now walking around to the front of the tent where the zipper was, and the tent was on pavement, so I would not be able to hear it walking anymore, which in fact I didn't. If that zipper would have moved a millimeter, I would have screamed my head off. I didn't get much sleep that night, and the next night I slept in the camper. So yeah, just the guy in the tent has this experience. He can hear these footsteps approaching the tent from behind, from where the woods are, like the deep woods. And everyone else is sleeping. They're in the camper, in the trailer. There's one guy pretty far away making a little bit of noise with pots and pans, which I'm assuming whatever this creature was doing was using that noise to his advantage to sneak up on this campground to see what was going on. Maybe the sounds were kind of like piquing his interest. And I don't know. It's creepy to just hear light footsteps like that approaching from behind, like from where you know the woods are. And to be able to catch a glimpse, just a very subtle glimpse of this thing, like the silhouette of it with the campfire at the other campground, like, that must have been quite the experience. But also as well, like, there's a lot of experiences like that where these things walk up to tents. Like my friend Keenan, I posted a video of his encounter with the Sasquatch walking up to his tent and pushing its hand into the tent fabric. I had an experience at Henry Lake that I put in a recent video where I swear something walks by the tent, you know? And it's just very subtle and creepy. It's not like making a lot of noise. It's like it's trying to be sneaky, which makes the whole experience a lot more terrifying. Something out there is lurking around in the woods that is intelligent enough to sneak around, to intentionally keep noise down, and to approach you to do God knows what. Like, it seems like it's a curiosity thing in a lot of these stories, especially this one. It was probably wondering what these people were doing with all their stuff set up, the tent and the camper, and wondering what all this noise is from the next campground. It was probably just checking things out. And it made a mistake too. It bumped into the tent, whatever it was. You would think that these people would have known if anyone else was around. I mean, the campgrounds were quite spread out, but having something walking around at night like that is really odd, and something covered in hair as well. And to have somebody just like walk through the middle of a campsite close enough to the tent to where it bumps into it, and it's someone who's not like trying to do things like maybe steal stuff or mess with people, like, that's weird. It doesn't seem like it's a person. It seems like Sasquatch behavior. So a lot of times these things make mistakes, you know, and they end up being seen. We like to think of them as very like masterful beings of the forest, but they do make mistakes and they get caught, you know, like in the first encounter I talked about in this video, they end up, you know, seeing it through the zipper and smelling it, something hairy and upright. In this story, he can see the silhouette through the zipper of the tent. And in the third story I'm about to share with you guys, like, this one's creepy because the person who is like telling the encounter didn't know that they were being followed by Sasquatch, and not just one Sasquatch, but two Sasquatch. And they found out because someone else in their family witnessed them being followed. So let's have a listen to that one. I woke up one morning and went into the trailer to get a cup of coffee, and we had two dogs, and I let them out and the little dog took off somewhere. I decided to go and look for her. I started walking up the hill right behind the trailer, and I got up to a rock face where I could look down on the other side of the hill. I couldn't see anything, and I was tired from walking up the hill, so I sat down to have a smoke. I sat there for about 5 minutes and was looking at a great view. Then I heard the dog bark, and I turned my head to look back, and all I saw was a 7 to 8 foot tall black streak running down the hill. I jumped up and started following it. I couldn't see it, but I could hear it crashing through the brush. I got down to the bottom of the hill where there was a clearing. When I got down to that clearing, the crashing noise stopped. Then on the second day, I decided to go for a walk in the early morning. I walked to the top of the hill and walked down going north. When I got to the middle of the hill, the hair on the back of my neck stood up and I got goosebumps. I looked behind me and beside me, but I didn't see anything, so I started walking again. I walked across the top of the hill and then walked through another clearing that would take me back to the camp. I walked through the clearing and saw the trailer and my little brother, and he was sitting outside. I waved to him and I walked back up over the same hill. I didn't see anything at all, but when I got back to camp, my mom, her boyfriend, and my little brother said that my little brother saw something orange in color walking on 2 legs following me. My mom said she had never seen him that scared before. On the 3rd day, after I knew that something was following me, I walked back up the same hill, and when I got about halfway up it, I could hear something. I looked up the hill, and there were branches of trees about 2 to 4 inches thick and about 3 to 4 feet long being thrown down the hill at me. So it's pretty crazy. The dog takes off from the camper because it senses something out there. It senses the Sasquatch creature. So this person goes off to look for the dog, not knowing that they're going to witness something weird. And they describe quickly seeing a 7 to 8 foot tall black streak taken off into the woods. So that's the first creature, but the brother ends up witnessing the next day an orange-haired creature. So there was 2 of them. There was 2 of them around there for days doing weird stuff. On the 3rd day, having sticks thrown at them. Like, the encounter ends abruptly there. It doesn't really go into any more detail. It just ends with the telling of this thing throwing sticks down the hill towards them. And they didn't witness the creature on that 3rd day. They just saw the sticks flying out of the bushes, basically. Classic Sasquatch behavior. Usually it's with rocks. But it's not uncommon to have sticks or like pine cones and stuff being thrown as well. And what are these things trying to do? Scare them out of the area? Or are they just curious? Are they young ones? I don't know. 7 to 8 feet tall doesn't really sound like a juvenile to me. Patty was over 7 feet tall in the Patterson-Gimlin film. But another amazing, creepy encounter at a campsite. These people weren't expecting anything weird like that, you know? And I think it probably happens a lot where people are out in the woods and they get a weird feeling and they don't even know. They don't even know that they're being followed by something. There could have been so many times where you or I had been out in the woods, hiking, camping, we have a weird feeling, the hair on our neck starts to stand up, and we don't see anything. Those moments could be moments when these things are around and we just don't know it. They're that good at hiding. But sometimes they're just not quick enough, and we catch a glimpse of them, and I think that's what happened here. I wonder if it's the same as like in the world of the paranormal. Kids will see more paranormal activity. Maybe they're more open to it. I wonder if it's the same with Bigfoot. I wonder if they're more open to approaching younger people because they're less dangerous. Their guard is down. They're not, on edge. Kids are kind of fearless sometimes. I mean, a lot of times they get scared quickly when they experience something, but a lot of times they're fearless and they're just open to things. And a lot of times they just don't understand things. There's probably a good chance that Sasquatch is most likely to approach a kid rather than an adult. And that could be why a lot of kids go missing in the national parks and in the wilderness areas of North America. Talking about like the missing 411 stories of people just vanishing without a trace. It happens to adults, but a lot of times it happens to little kids. So they just go missing and they end up in places that they shouldn't be. All the way up a mountain. Like miles away. So anyways, those are the encounters I wanted to share. They happen at campgrounds. Not deep in the wilderness. They're happening to normal people who are not expecting anything weird to go on. They're not happening to Bigfoot researchers. Bigfoot researchers barely have visual encounters. So maybe we should just go out into the woods camping like normal people and not, going poking around in an intrusive way with this stuff on our mind all the time. So, I don't know. Thanks for watching this video. We'll see you next time on Mountain Beast Mysteries.